Okay, now it's time for some wisdom from the Word. Sometimes my 13-year-old daughter will come up to me and say, "Dad, do you love me? Do you want me to be happy?" And of course, I know what she's getting at. I don't know what she's about to ask me, but she's about to ask me something. Fortunately, I think my daughter knows that that's not going to work in some ways. Um, and I don't think that she really thinks that's what love is. I hope, because I'm trying to teach her otherwise. But it's really funny because that's what the world teaches about love, doesn't it? If I get what I want and if you do what I want, then you love me. So just last week, of course, was Valentine's Day, and we're celebrating love and thinking about love. And this is an important topic. So not only do we know that the world is confused about love, but the reality is it's pretty hard to love people. And God calls us to love our enemies. It's not easy. And so I think let's just take a minute to define what is love biblically and how do we do it. That's pretty tough. A few weeks ago, we were talking about John 15 and how Jesus is looking for fruit, and our fruit is glorifying to God. One thing we can find out in John 15 is that the number one fruit that Jesus is looking for is love. John 15, verse 9 says, "As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." And then in verse 11, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." So as you probably know, love is not a feeling. Sometimes we use the word love as a feeling or as a desire in our culture. But you probably have heard that according to Scripture, love is not a feeling, it's self-sacrifice for the good of another. And of course, that comes right here from John 15:13 that we just read. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. So we know that it is personal sacrifice. And we know, why would we sacrifice? Well, we would do it for the good of someone that we love. But this brings up a huge question. What is good? What is happiness? We know that it isn't always what the other person wants. An example of that, of course, is our children. One of my sons is always asking to play with, or more importantly, to use something dangerous. When he was very little, he always wanted to use a knife or a pocket knife. And so for a long time, I said, "No, you can't do that." Eventually, I was able to give him a pocket knife. The other day, though, I had my chainsaw out. And of course, "Hey, Dad, can I do that? Can I try that?" He wasn't quite ready yet. As soon as possible, I'm going to train him and I'm going to let him do it. But it wasn't that day. And so we know that as parents, we don't let our kids have or do whatever they want. Let me just stop real quick and say, many parents today are letting their kids do what they want. Many parents today have bought the lie of the culture that giving your kids what they want is loving them. But you got to understand, that isn't love. We know from 1 Corinthians 13, verse 6, that it says, "Love does not rejoice with evil, but rejoices with the truth." So we know that there's truth, there's objective truth. We as parents know what's good and right for our kids, and we can be willing, and we do have the authority to say no or to say yes at the right time. So loving our kids is saying no sometimes. And so if you're struggling with that as a parent, I would encourage you to be loving by saying no. And of course, you're going to say no to dangerous things, but there are a lot of things you might be saying yes to when they need to know that you're in charge and that you care for them and that you know what is best for them. But back to the bigger picture, which is we're all called, as we follow Jesus, to love others, which means I'm going to sacrifice myself for the good of others. And I know that the good and the right is defined by Scripture. And that means knowing and loving Jesus. So as a parent, As a husband, maybe as a wife, you have the opportunity to say, what would bring the greatest blessing, the greatest goodness, the greatest amount of Jesus into the lives of my family, of my neighbors, of my friends, at any cost? What would I be willing to do to make sure they have that? And now we're talking about love, real love, the love that God gives us and that we can give to others. So let's take this wisdom from the Word and let it set the culture for our homes, for our marriages, for our families, for our parenting, and know that one day Jesus can come to my life, to your life, and look and see and find the fruit of love.